Come join me today as I make this delicious, soul-warming jackfruit corn chowder. It's very easy to make, takes only a few ingredients, and it's the perfect vegan soup for a cold winter night. So first we are going to cut the jackfruit. Now the jackfruit has three portions: the really hard part, the middle part, and the end on the other side. Yeah, there we go. Now the hard part is the one that we need to discard, so I'm just going to chop it off really quickly, and then the rest of it is what we're going to use to make the chowder. So it's very simple. All I do is just pick it up and just press gently on it, and it pulls apart really quickly. So you don't need to apply a lot of pressure, and it's very simple, just like that. All of it falls apart. Now I've already done a few, so let me just show you what it all looks like, and this is what it is. And as you can see, some people tell me it looks like tuna, some say it looks like chicken, but it's all jackfruit, and it's all vegan. Jackfruit is actually a fruit that grows in tropical climates, and you can go to my blog. I talk a lot more about jackfruit on there. So I'm going to take a paper towel and just dab down the jackfruit that we just pulled apart. I want to make sure that there's no moisture on it or any of the brine solution that the jackfruit came in. It really ruins the taste and makes it watery chowder. You don't want that. So I'm just going to start by adding oil to a hot pan, and that's about maybe 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then to the oil I add about 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds, and then I add about 1/4 cup of finely diced celery. I add about 1 cup of yellow onions or white onions. And now I'm just going to give them a quick stir and make sure they are softened before I add the garlic and the ginger. So now I add about 1 teaspoon of both garlic and ginger. This is finely shredded, or you can have it diced. Either way is fine. And I'm going to stir it again really quickly, and I'm going to let it cook by itself for maybe about 5 minutes on medium to low heat. And I'm going to make sure it all softens before I add the jackfruit in it. And now that it's all softened, I add the jackfruit that we pulled apart. This is about maybe 2 cups of jackfruit. If you don't understand jackfruit, or you've never tried it before, or you're like me who doesn't really like it as much, maybe use about 1 cup of jackfruit in this recipe. And then as you get more acclaimed, your taste buds get used to jackfruit, you can start adding more jackfruit to it. Or if you're already on the camp of jackfruit, just go ahead and add as much as you want. Now I'm just going to break them apart a little bit. Some of the chunks are still a little big, so I like to make them as small as possible. And I'm going to stir this whole thing, and I'm going to cook it for maybe about 5 minutes on low heat, and then we're going to start adding some of the other ingredients in it. Okay, so it's cooked about 5 minutes now, so I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. Now that might sound a lot, but once you add all the other ingredients in it, like the milk and the corn and everything, you'll notice that the salt kind of blends well and just brings the whole recipe together. So add 1 teaspoon, and then we are going to adjust at a later point. Now that was oregano that I just added to the recipe, and that's followed by parsley, and I'm just going to give it a quick stir before we add the remaining ingredients in it. So this has been cooking for a few minutes, and then I just add a little Thai chili to it. I like my chowder on the spicy side, so that's why I added about 2 Thai chilies in it. Now this is completely optional. You can choose to add jalapeno or just keep the spice out altogether. It's perfectly okay, but I like mine on the spicy side, so that's why I added the Thai chili to it. And now it's time to add the corn to it. This is about 1 cup of corn to the chowder. I used frozen, and I don't thaw the corn out. I put it directly into the pan, and the reason for that is when you put it into a hot pan, it automatically starts thawing by itself, and at the same time the water is going to evaporate. So this way your corn chowder does not get soggy, and it's not mushy or anything like that. You'll notice your corn is going to have an actual crunch when you just put it directly into the pan without thawing it. If I had planned this beforehand, I would have actually used a cast iron pan, and at this point I would have put the cast iron pan into a preheated oven of maybe 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then just let the oven cook the jackfruit and corn for maybe about 10 minutes, no more than that, because you don't want the corn chowder to brown. And this part of the corn chowder is actually done. The jackfruit is well cooked and the corn is perfectly thawed. So now I'm just going to take it off the heat and set it aside, and we are going to start making the roux next. So for the roux, I heated a pan and I add equal parts of butter and flour. And let's fast forward through the butter melting process and just admire how beautiful that looks. Okay, so the butter has melted perfectly, and it's time to add the flour. Now this is also a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to add it in 3 separate steps because I don't want to make it clumpy. So I added about maybe a tablespoon right now. I'm going to adjust the heat just a little bit and then keep stirring so that it doesn't stick at the bottom. And then I add 1 more tablespoon after that, and I'm stirring, making sure that it doesn't brown, and I'm also making sure that it's not sticking at the bottom. And then it's finally time to add the last portion of the flour. And as you can see that it's already starting to become thick, and this is perfect because this is the texture that you want. Now I was always intimidated at the process of making roux. I always thought it was like this fancy term for French cooking, and as you can see, this is just, it's so easy. It took like seconds, so I don't even know why I was intimidated by the process. But I also learned from a French chef how to make roux, and he told me that people make the mistake of putting roux into the final ingredients when it should be the other way around. You have to put the ingredients into the roux. So I'm going to take the jackfruit that we cooked earlier with the corn and put it inside this container. And so just that's my advice to you guys. If you have never made roux before, always put your ingredients into the roux. Never take the roux out of the container that you made it in. Now once you have all your ingredients inside the container, give it a very good stir. You want to make sure the roux is incorporated into the jackfruit and the corn, and you also want to make sure that it's not sticking at the bottom. So really just give it all you've got. Make sure you stir it really well, and then we are going to add the remaining ingredients. So now I add 1 cup of water, and I'll give it a quick stir, and you will notice almost immediately that it starts to thicken, and that's because of the roux that we made earlier. I'm also adjusting the heat, turning it up just a little bit to medium, and then I'm going to let it cook for a few seconds before adding the milk. And this is what it looks like after you've mixed it well. And at this point we're going to start adding the ingredients. So that is 2 tablespoons of coconut milk, and then that's about 1 teaspoon of cracked black pepper, and then I add milk in it. Now I think this comes out to about 3 cups of milk. Maybe I'll even go up to 4 cups if you like. And once you add the milk in it, it's pretty much done. Now it's just a matter of adding the flavors, and as you can see, it's starting to look a lot like corn chowder, and I think this looks delicious so far. So now I add salt to this. Now you might think it's a little too much, but trust me, the salt actually works, and because the jackfruit tends to absorb most of the salt, you're not gonna feel like this is a very salty chowder. And I just add about 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast, about 1 teaspoon parsley dried, about 1 teaspoon of oregano, and 1 final stir. And at this point, it's complete. I just left it on the stove for maybe about 5 more minutes on low heat and waited for it to thicken just a little bit, and that was it. Now, I served this corn chowder in 2 different ways. One was in this bread bowl, and oh my god, it was so delicious. And the other was a regular bowl, and it was just as delicious. I added a few croutons on top, or you can even serve it with regular toasted bread, and it tastes just as good. So thank you for joining me on this recipe, and come back next time when we make something different.